From folklore and fairies
to monsters and mysteries,
it came from the Maritimes.
Once upon a midnight dreary, she did ponder, weak and weary, my co-host, Chelsea.
Cursing anyone who dares to cross his path, my co-host, Evan.
Hello everyone, welcome to It Came From The Maritimes. Today's topic is going to be Oak Island and the Oak Island mystery. There's a lot to talk about here, and I'd say this is potentially one of the most famous things to be known around the world about Nova Scotia. Do you have any kind of early things to say about Oak Island? Any experiences with it, or just the general?
I remember that a lot of the children's or early chapter books that I read growing up were about Oak Island because I loved mysteries ever since childhood. So there'd be a lot of fictional tales about that. I've sadly never been to Oak Island. It's on my list.
Well, I think it's privately owned now, so I think you need to sign up with a tour with the owners of it if you want to go. And since there's a lot going on there these days, and I'll kind of get into that as we're going here.
I can't wait to hear about it.
Oak Island is a small island not far from Mahone Bay on the south shore of Nova Scotia. It is internationally known as being the site of a centuries-old treasure hunt that has incited the curiosity of many, including having an 11-season reality show searching for buried treasure and getting the attention of famous people such as Franklin Roosevelt, a one-time investor in treasure hunting efforts on the island. It is said that there is a curse on the island, and that 7 treasure hunters will need to die before it will be unearthed. But is there more to the mysterious money pit than what meets the eye? As a warning, this episode will be discussing death. I want to begin by saying that this is by no means a comprehensive account of Oak Island, as there is a rich history that would take days to discuss in depth. Additionally, this will be briefly talking about many theories, and will likely skip over some. Because of the popularity of the topic, everyone with the ability to communicate in any way has decided that they need to make their opinions on Oak Island known, even if their theories make little to no sense. Oak Island is in an area known to the Mi'kmaq as Senapinagitig. I apologize if I said that wrong. In the 1750s, it was settled by French fishermen and later taken over by British colonies. Later, it was surveyed and divided into 32 lots, though over the years it has gone through many different owners. Early records of treasure hunting are all word of mouth, so it's hard to know the exact dates, and many are best estimates. Around 1799, while searching for a good location for a farm, Daniel McGuinness found a depression in the ground and, curious of the stories he had heard of buried treasure, began digging. With the help of 2 friends, he found a layer of flagstones 2 feet below and found that there were oak platforms every 10 feet. It was noted that there were tool marks and the earth was loose and easy to dig out, implying that it had been dug before. At 30 feet, they abandoned the project due to having superstitious dread. It should also be noted that part of their curiosity about the treasure was because of marks on an oak tree overhead, which seemed to appear that there were ropes that were going over it to lower and lift things out of the hole. In 1802, the Onslow Company came in and continued to dig the money pit to a depth of 90 feet, and continued to find layers of oak logs every 10 feet. They also found charcoal, coconut fiber, and a large stone inscribed with symbols, which I will discuss later. When they got to 90 feet, the hole flooded with 60 feet of water and had to be abandoned. They tried to dig another hole nearby, but it was similarly flooded and the project was abandoned. In 1849, the Truro Company re-excavated the pit, but at 86 feet it flooded again, which you may see as a common theme in a lot of these stories. You're going to see a lot of digging and a lot of flooding. They dug a hole nearby and at 98 feet, bore holes towards the original shaft where they were able to find oak, metal, casks, and an oak chest, which some say was a decoy for the real treasure. Others say that the chest had treasure, and one of the crew removed it for themselves. They tried to continue downward and connect with the original shaft at a deeper layer, but their tunnel was flooded. They made another shaft to 118 feet, but when they attempted to access the original, it caused a collapse in the money pit, and some say that the treasure fell into a deep void. During their time, they also found a nearby cave system in Smith's Cove, which they believed to be used to flood the money pit and protect the treasure. They found that there was a flood system which they believe that whoever made or buried the treasure there used to keep others from getting to it. They ran out of funds in 1851, but soon after there was media attention and people around the world heard of the famous island. In 1861, a group called the Oak Island Association attempted to excavate and had pumps to pump out the floodwater. This proved to be fatal, as one of their engines exploded and killed the first of 6 victims of the Oak Island treasure hunt. They attempted to later block off Smith's Cove to prevent flooding, but were unsuccessful and eventually ran out of funds. In 1866, the Oak Island El Dorado Company, also known as the Halifax Company, attempted to shut off flood tunnels, but were also unsuccessful. In 1896, another group attempted to excavate, and when unsuccessful, later took samples by boring. They found a small piece of sheepskin parchment with the letters VI or WI written in ink, and their trials also attempted to put red paint into the flooded hole and found 3 different places around the island where it escaped, showing that the flooding had multiple potential sources. This expedition also had a second death during the excavation. In 1909, the Old Gold Salvage Group began to excavate. Their ranks included Franklin Roosevelt. They cleared the money pit to 113 feet and sent in divers, but ultimately found nothing. In 1928, William Chappell and Gilbert Hedden separately read about the treasure and attempted to search for it. Neither were successful, and by this point there were so many holes that the location of the original money pit is not fully known. In 1959, the Restall family attempted to dig a pit, but were overcome by hydrogen sulfide fumes, which caused 4 deaths. Around the same time, Robert Dunfield brought a crane to the island to allow larger excavations, and a causeway was made to facilitate the treasure hunter. In 1967, the Triton Alliance formed and made a borehole down to bedrock at 235 feet. They sent a camera down, which they claimed saw possible chests, human remains, wooden cribbing, and tools, but realistically, the camera images were not clear enough to know what they saw. Robert S. Young bought a lot of land on the island and has done his own cataloging of things he found and has a website called oakislandlot5.com, which shows these. One of these things that he found was a Spanish coin dating to 1781. Later, Oak Island Tours and the Michigan Group have taken over, including the Lagina brothers, who host the Curse of Oak Island television show. That was kind of a brief version of the history. Again, you can find much longer versions, and if you're interested in that, I recommend taking out one of the hundreds of books about it, because there's a great history out there with it all, but you're going to read a lot about different hole depths and that they flooded over and over again.
What I find so interesting is just that this has been going on for over 200 years now. And for me, it's like, I just guess I assumed with all the increasing advancements in technology that they'd be able to figure it out at some point. It's like back in the 1800s, if they didn't have like the tools or excavators we have now, why they couldn't. But you'd think with like the diving technology, things like that.
Yeah, I do think there's probably a little bit of it is that we have stricter safety precautions these days.
Fair.
Which is a good thing. But I also think what a lot of people have mentioned is that it seems like there is something engineered to flood the tunnels once you get close enough. And that seems to be what people are most concerned about. There's a lot of theories around that, and I'll kind of touch on some of them, but...
Yeah, I'm super interested to hear more about that.
Now I'm going to talk about what people think the treasure is. And honestly, this is one of the things I find the most interesting of all of this. There are many theories as to what is buried in the money pit. While there is some proof that it could just be a natural occurrence, there's also a lot of proof to suggest that the money pit was made by humans. One of the pieces of evidence is the inscribed stone that I previously mentioned. It is said to have been a 175-pound stone, about 3 feet wide and a foot thick. When it was first taken out, it was used as part of a fireplace in a home built on the island and later moved to the shop of Augustus Creighton in Halifax, where it was used as a binding beater and weight. People have said that they translated the stone with the inscriptions on it and said 10 feet below 10 million pounds are buried. This is seen as unlikely, as Creighton had it as a promotional campaign to get people to invest in his treasure hunting. Additionally, they say that after him using it for years, the inscription has worn off, with some questioning if there was ever anything on it to begin with. One other piece of evidence is that there's a stone triangle, which, as the name suggests, is a triangle made of stones with a line going through it which points directly to the money pit. It is no longer there, but suggests that at some point, if someone buried treasure, they would want to mark it to be able to find it. Many believe that there's a link to the Vikings, as they were the earliest Europeans known to travel to North America. With the famous site of Lanso Meadows being nearby in Newfoundland, it is thought that some of the Viking tales may be telling of coming to Nova Scotia. Some theorize that it is not buried treasure, but instead a Viking ship that was pulled into a sinkhole and tipped vertically, causing the even layers of wood. Later it would have been covered by earth due to shifts in the ocean. Another theory is that it was a Viking burial mound where chiefs were known to have been buried with their boats and treasures. So I think that these are interesting theories.
Well, because that's the thing. It's the wooden planking that I keep coming back to, because it's like a natural sinkhole with the flooding is one thing, but the wooden planking, it's got to be explained somehow.
Well, especially if it's even at every 10 feet. That seems pretty suspect.
Oh, that's it. It's deliberate. Like, there's no way it's not. So the ship, like, I don't know how ships are arranged, but that's an interesting concept to me.
Yeah, having a ship just go vertical and staying exactly vertical, and that does seem a little far-fetched, but everything in this is a little bit far-fetched, and that's kind of the fun of it. Other theories involve other early colonizers, such as the Spanish. While they were usually far south of Nova Scotia, they were in the Americas as early as 1519. Some Spanish coins have been found on Oak Island, with some dating as far back as 1652. Some believe that Spanish ships would stop on Oak Island prior to sailing the Atlantic and would stash their treasure there to ensure its safety. Also, the presence of coconut husks on Oak Island is more proof of the Spanish, as they used coconut husks as packing materials when shipping across the seas. Another theory is that Spanish coins could have ended up there due to them being taken as plunder of war by the English. Pirates are another popular theory, with Mahone of Mahone Bay thought to be a French word for a Turkish ship which was often used as pirate vessels. The most popular story is that of Captain Kidd, who was charged and executed due to piracy. While there is debate about the line between piracy and privateering at the time, his treasure is famous and is often cited as the main theory for what is hidden here. During his piracy trial, he said that he had hid what would be the equivalent of $20 million in today's money, and that no one would ever find it. Here again, the coconut husk is a tie to the island, as pirates were often in the Caribbean, where you can find coconuts. Some believe that the flood system for the money pit was actually a draining system to allow pirates to repair their ships, rather than to flood the money pit, which could be interesting. You sail your ship in, drain it out, make it a lot easier, and then it would make sense for pirates to want to have a place to bury their treasure. So that is another theory with pirates. There's an array of other theories tying the island to Europe, such as treasure taken during the Scottish Revolution, a pit used by colonizers to make tar for ships, the remains of a French fortress, treasures hidden during the Acadian expulsion, and Marie Antoinette's crown jewels that were smuggled out during the Revolution.
Now that would be a topic if Marie Antoinette's treasure ended up in Nova Scotia.
Yeah, this is where things just get a little bit kind of wild, and just anyone who has any sort of theory put it out there for a while. And it's hard to kind of get the wheat from the chaff, figure out what people were serious about and what they were just kind of throwing out into the wind.
Yeah, as like vague ideas.
Yeah. Some of the other theories are much more convoluted, such as the Incans moving treasure to hide it from the invading Spanish, which seems weird that they would bring it all the way up to Nova Scotia to protect it from the Spanish who were invading.
Yeah, that would be one heck of a journey.
Another is the Knights Templar, which you mentioned Henry Sinclair earlier. He is thought to be the leader of this, who hid either the Holy Grail or the Ark of the Covenant there. And then there's other people who believe that there are the lost transcripts that prove that Shakespeare's plays were actually written by Sir Francis Bacon.
Just throwing this out there, it seems pretty silly to hide a bunch of paper in a flooding hole.
So there's an entire group called Baconians who believe that Shakespeare's plays were written by Sir Francis Bacon. And a lot of it seems to be kind of classist in that Shakespeare was low-born, so they don't believe he should be smart enough.
Oh.
And Francis Bacon was a real, Renaissance man and a favorite of Queen Elizabeth. But there was one man in particular, I forget his name, but he had a theory that in Wales, all of these transcripts were buried in a cave in a lead-lined box, and then he went searching for them. And then when they weren't there, he decided that they were on Oak Island. And maybe there's a reasoning out there, but I cannot find any of them. And all I found was that at the end of his life, he said that he wasted his life kind of following this really strange line of thought. To tie this back more to our usual topics, there are also supernatural theories tied to the money pit. One is that it was created by extraterrestrials as an entryway to their subterranean outpost. In 1796, 1 year after the money pit was first discovered, there were sightings of spaceships from New Minas heading east towards Oak Island. Additionally, a man named Henry Aline saw a blaze of fire in the sky while in the area. His description was, "There appeared a large blaze of light in the shape of a circle, with that side next to me open, as though it yawned after me. As it drew very nigh me, it closed up in a small compass, and then broke out in small sparkles and vanished away." While he took it as a sign from God, many interpret it today as aliens. There is also a story of a man who saw a light in the sky which pointed him to Oak Island, to the money pit where he started digging and found the stone with inscriptions on it, which he then stopped digging because he was too afraid of what he found. Other evidence of an alien outpost are that the flood tunnels are said to be too sophisticated of technology for people at the time, and that there are limestone caverns in the area which people feel would be a good hiding place for the aliens. Like, no particular reason. It seems like they're just like, oh, these limestone caverns, I bet aliens would like it.
Right? I feel like caverns would make a good hiding place for anyone. I wouldn't think specifically aliens, especially if they had access to the entire sky and universe, but
Yeah. And then also like many things like the pyramids, like a lot of ancient feats of engineering, people like to give credit to the aliens. So they think the flood tunnels are something that people wouldn't have been able to do at the time.
honestly, I love a good alien story, so I'm down with it.
Yeah. There's also many ghost stories related to the island. I'm going to be kind of just touching on some of them. Some say that there are ghost lights that show the way to the treasure, so like kind of a will-o-wisp type of thing, though most seem to be about how ghosts are trying to protect the treasure. One particular character is the ghost in a red coat. He will appear as a man in a red coat who will approach those who are searching for treasure. One known instance is him approaching a man digging a hole and telling him that he is in the wrong spot, and then he jumped into the hole and disappeared. Another creature that is often mentioned is a black dog with eyes that glow like coals. It is said that if you approach the money pit at night, it will ward you off, and so far no one has been brave enough to approach it. One other story is from the night following the death on the crew of the Oak Island Association. It is said that night that many members of the crew had dreams of Captain Kidd approaching them and warding them away from the money pit. The final set of theories is not about what the money pit holds, but instead what would need that many layers of protection to keep contained. Some believe there's a Lovecraftian monster that slumbers below, waiting for a chance to rise. Others believe that it is the gate to hell itself.
Ho ho.
As I wrap up this story, I want to again revisit the curse that says 7 must die before the treasure is revealed. On the 200th anniversary of the start of the treasure hunt, a memorial was erected with the names of 6 people who have died in search of treasure. There's a space at the bottom for one more name, and only time will tell whose sacrifice may reveal our treasure.
I love how dark it is that they've left space for the 7th name.
I mean, I looked at a picture and it actually seems like there's space for maybe 4 or 5 more names, but that's not as haunting.
Very cool.
The real thing here is many people claim to have solved the problem. There's at least a dozen books that are called like Oak Island Solved or The Solution to Oak Island or anything else, probably more than a dozen, but realistically we'll probably never know.
Yeah, it's one of those things that, I don't know, it's just so intriguing that, I don't know. I mean, it's one of those things, there's so many options. Like, did someone find the treasure like 200 years ago and then...
And that's the thing, we kind of can't know, and now it's owned by the people who are running that TV show, so...
Yeah, no more solo treasure hunting.
Yeah, I don't think, you can't just roll up and with a shovel and hope for the best there. You're gonna get kicked out pretty quick, I bet.
Oh, it sounds like it. Yeah, I find the ghost stories about it interesting because I remember reading something somewhere about how when a pirate buried their treasure, they would bring along like an extra person and murder them at the site of the buried treasure. And that person's ghost was essentially condemned to guard their treasure until the end of time. So that seems to be like a recurring theme in buried treasure stories.
Yeah,
so it's interesting, the ghost story surrounding it.
And that's actually, some people have that theory, in particular with Captain Kidd. There was one ghost story that I saw, like where it vaguely mentioned that he had the last person who was burying the treasure, he just shot in the hole and left them there.
Ooh, it's dark stuff.
Yeah, but it's really interesting. Especially, I love the Lovecraftian angle. It's not what are we protecting, but what are we protecting the outside world from?
Well, that's just it. We'll never know, or hopefully we don't.
Exactly. So we'll end off this episode there. Thank you so much for joining us for this episode of It Came From The Maritimes. You can find us on social media on Instagram and Facebook at It Came From The Maritimes, on X at ICFT Maritimes. And if you have any Atlantic Canada folklore you would like to see covered in future episodes, or if you'd like to see something that we've talked about already a little bit more in depth, if you're really interested in one of the topics about Oak Island or anything else, please let us know. Email us at itcamefromthemaritimes@gmail.com. And now Chelsea's going to share a folklore tip for us.
So, according to Nova Scotians over the years, if you dream about a shovel, it's a sign that you will receive great riches. Let's hope one day someone discovers the riches of Oak Island.